Today, as the world's water floods and seeps and trickles away, we risk the drying up of progress. The stark political realities of water scarcity set some regions in economic and social drought, while others enjoy the tide of prosperity. Even the most technically advanced nations cannot fathom these intractable problems. Amidst the pessimistic aridity, the artistic imagination, fluid and nurturing, may help science to find a solution. The crisis calls for different ways of knowing, of thinking, and of understanding. And perhaps it will be artists and scientists working together which will channel public behavior towards a fairer handling of the world's greatest resource.
Well, the environmental issues inevitably involve decisions based on emotions, strong feelings, and somehow, even though art and science both deal with realities and with imagined worlds, getting the emotional content and making contact with the emotions of people is something which the humanities and the arts just somehow have an easier time with.
So one of the things I think is really vital about getting the humanities involved with environmental studies is that we know that hard science no longer has all the answers. And so we need culturalist perspectives that can stop and make us listen to the world around us. And that's precisely what the study of music and sound can do.
My colleague and I, Tammo Steenhuis from Biological and Environmental Engineering, put together a team of interdisciplinary students and we took them to Greece. We went to a small town where I knew there was a very sympathetic mayor, and we actually left them there for 3 weeks to do their research. We set up a situation where they would create a water profile of the village. But as we were touring around Greece trying to find the right place to work, we went to areas where we knew there were water problems, either scarcity or pollution. I was staying with my old friend and colleague Marisa Koch, one of the most famous singers in Greece. She's a wonderful singer. And she said, look, I'll come with you and I'll send one of my musicians ahead of us to each town. And by the time we get there, he will have taught the children a couple of water songs. There are so many in the Greek repertoire about water because Greece is a water-short region and has always regarded water as a very precious substance. So he went ahead of us. When we arrived, Marisa spent another few hours with the children. And so on the evening of our conference, there were, instead of 15 people discussing water, 200, 300 parents and children gathered in the town square singing songs about water. And when the children had finished, Marisa just began her repertoire of dozens and dozens of Greek songs about water.
The arts have at least one important gift to make to the sciences: a large audience ready to feel.
Waterculture Women's Works is an ongoing commissioning project to generate a body of compositions for mezzo-soprano and chamber orchestra. The project was inspired by Gail Holst Warhaft's work with Marisa Koch in Greece.
Here's a waterfall in the forest.
What I believe concerts can do to make an impact on environmental issues is to provide a space where people can come together and have a personal reflection time. So rather than pushing an agenda, we can provide music that has a background, that has a story, and it allows people to spend their own time and think in their own way about what that means. So in a way, it's transforming values, but on people's own terms. When people are engaged emotionally about environmental issues, they're much more compelled to act and to change behaviors and to find solutions.
But how are scientists and artists to navigate the leagues and depths between themselves?
I think we're reasonably well formed as ethical beings by our parents, our teachers, by the time that you enter graduate school. But it's really important to reinforce both the aesthetic and the ethical imagination through case studies at the graduate student level. Scientists talk to artists, we try to understand. I think this is the main positive result of what you've done.
Cayenna, Ponchione and I have been working for the last 2 years really on a project that we devised, which was intended to be a collaboration between Oxford University and Cornell on scarcity of water in the world. How are we going to address this? What's the new generation of scholars going to do in the arts and sciences to address this? So we came up with the title of Art, Science and the Thirsty World.
Art, Science and the Thirsty World cast academics from every discipline adrift together, united only by a shared political concern and a determination to build a narrative of hope. Difference became a source of inspiration, and creativity flowed from it. Words poured.
The confluence of unprecedented rates of population growth, global environmental change, biodiversity loss, and land clearance means that food security and the need to feed a growing population in the 21st century is one of the most pertinent issues faced by people throughout the world. So over the past year, I've been collaborating with various artists in Oxford and Cornell in order to address issues related to agriculture, water security, and climate change. Why agriculture? Because it consumes 70% of the world's resources, 19 to 29% of greenhouse gases, and is the largest contributor to non-greenhouse gas emissions. And in particular, we are interested in looking at the issues faced by smallholder farmers, and this is because they lack many of the risk mitigation tools, such as access to long-term credit or access to markets and the ability to store food in light of various changes that are occurring at unprecedented rates. So the collaboration with Avery Slater, an excellent poet from Cornell University, and I was that she took some of the quotes from some of the interviews that I've been working with farmers, and we formed a poem which talked about issues related from the first person of these farmers, women, men, from the Terai plains of Nepal and Upper West Ghana, and talked about issues related to flooding, related to siltation, related to the rains coming later, and these all were formed in a beautiful cohesion.
image and music moved together and spelled out in their distilled ideas and liquid sounds a harmony between science and art.
So I was paired for this conference with Charles Ogilvie, who's an artist, and Liz Carter, who's a scientist working in the field of biodynamics. For the project in Cornell, we were asked to work with a scientist to find a theme that resonated with us as artists. Liz's research is in the field of nitrogen pollution, and she led us onto a story about hypoxia, which is oxygen deficit caused by nitrogen pollution. Both Charles and I were very inspired by the way that this story not only has a very physical manifestation, but also a human one. It's a very emotional story. When we were dealing with this project, Charlie and I wanted to engage with the emotional quality of the big data that was involved. Quite a lot of this data can be seen as sort of abstract when it's just written down on paper, and we wanted to give it some sort of emotional quality for people in the room. We looked first of all at how we could create an artistic model or a mirror for the same sort of sense of tragedy and devastation, and we decided to go for the format of a lecture performance. This sort of entailed having the audience experiencing the journey of normality to devastation, and through that we used music, sound effects, lighting effects to try and mimic this idea of suffocation, of desperation. I was very inspired when working with this project, which was all about devastation and tragedy, to see if there was also a more positive side. There are 3 major fountains which had recently been under lots of algae pollution. So they enlisted various scientists to try and remove the algae. And I was very inspired by this as a product of hope. And I decided to write a little set of 3 piano miniatures inspired by these beautiful fountains. Art, Science and the Thirsty World as a conference really inspired us to start to engage with issues of arts and science and the way they interact. It's actually inspired me to try and start a centre in Oxford looking at these issues, looking at the way in which arts can help science, perhaps in their communication and the engagement with the public.
Culture, as fluid as water, is always changing, as Da Vinci predicts. Although it is celebrated by the arts, at the heart of religions, and cherished in 1,000 secular rituals, water is running out. Imagining the lack is hard, but imagining is what the arts are for, and it is what we need to do.